Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. So today I'm going to show you how I made this. This is a horizontal pattern following router with a one-to-one setup, but we're going to build this today, and then at the end of the video, stick around because I'm going to tell you why these machines really aren't worth the effort unless you're doing very specific type of work. All right, so this is the arm that the router is going to sit on. Now it has to move back and forth and up and down, and that gives us that motion for it to move freely so it can follow patterns. Now the hinge mechanism that the router sits on needs to be pretty beefy and pretty stable. So I'm using some 1 1/8 roughly thick cherry that's about 4 1/4 inches wide. And I'm cutting out a little section on both sides on the bottom, or I guess on the one end of it, to create a hinge. Now I want to make sure that I'm making this as strong and as beefy as possible, and now I'm also cutting out a couple pieces here for some guides so this will move up straight up and down and it won't wiggle back and forth. Now once I had the sections cut out, I just cleaned everything up with a chisel. I wasn't real careful, I just removed the material and then used my chisel to clean it up. I want to mention also that my vise, my quick action bench vise, the plans are up on the website now. I know I've got a lot of emails about people asking for those. So with the bottom sections made, I came back to make the top section and more or less just cut out the same notch pattern in the top section as I did in the bottom section, and then I glued these little secondary pieces in, and then I screwed them as well so they'd be nice and secure, and this is where the hinge is actually going to be. So after laying out the hinges, I marked the positions and drilled the holes, and then the top piece I needed to kind of round over the front of it so it wouldn't bind up in the hinge. So I did that over on the bandsaw, and then I used some thread taps from the new thread taps from Mark Spagnolo, the Wood Whisperer, and Andy Klein. I used those for this whole build. They're very handy, and you'll see me use them again here at the end of the build. So I needed to cut out these pieces that are going to act as vertical supports, but to do that I needed to lay everything out first. So once I had the hinge made, I could actually just set a piece up there and kind of follow the inside of it with a pencil. That way when I move this thing, the pieces are the same arc as the hinge itself. Now I made these really tight. In other words, the top hinge piece was really tight in between these, and that helps with any lateral movement so they won't wiggle, the piece won't wiggle back and forth. And that's going to help this thing stay very, very stable. You could do this with steel as well and make it even more stable. Now after I got that in, I just mounted the router on a real simple system. It's just an L frame with some wedges, and then I built a box on the front, and I'll talk more about that towards the end of the video. So to line this thing up, I just created this L piece that's the same level as the box that the material will sit on, and I put the L where it would be exactly lined up with the bit, and then I just drilled a hole 1/4 inch because I'm using a 1/4 inch bit with this system, and that was it. So I went and tried to test it out, and of course it's a little bit off, but the beauty about this system is that it's completely adjustable. So even if the hinge isn't perfect or a little off kilter, you can adjust it out to really dial it into the 1-to-1. Now for the hold downs, I just drilled some 5/16 holes and then used a 3/8 tap from Andy and the Wood Whisperer, and that made a really quick, fast, easy way to make hold downs. So now I could set this thing up and literally just take a 3/8 bolt, drill a hole through a piece of wood, and here I'm lining everything up. So I just drilled a hole through a piece of wood and then 3/8 bolts and just lagged them down, and that was really fast way to make hold downs and super secure. So I really liked that, and that came in really handy. So once I have everything down, I'm going to go ahead and test it. This is the first run here, or second run here, I think. I tried it in some plywood earlier, and it was a little off. Not bad, a little bit. And then again, move the camera so you guys could see what was going on, and I just cut it out there. And I'll show you the box mechanisms, how the box moves in and out first. Thought about putting a handle on it so you could just like move it in and out freely, but it really didn't make sense for this application. It was a lot easier just to make the box float on there, and then I have a locking bolt, and I'll show you that here in a second on the side. So I can move it in incrementally, and then I can concentrate on just using, concentrate on following the pattern here. So after cutting the first box joint, I put a second piece of oak in, and again I'm just going to use the same pattern that I'm following with the pattern follower, and I cut out another box joint. And I'm not too worried about getting the pieces to line up, I just really want to test the fit of the joint. And so I got that somewhat lined up on the bed and tested it. And one thing about these 1-to-1s, with like on Matthias's machine where it's 2-to-1, it's a lot easier to eat up little tiny mistakes, where with a 1-to-1 you have to be a lot more careful about making your patterns, because if there's a little divot or it's a little bit off, it shows up in the joint. So after cutting the second one, I tested the fit real quick, and it wasn't bad, not bad at all, and I was pretty happy with that. The way I move this box back and forth is really simple. The box just sits on top of the bed. Now on the opposite side you can't see, but there's a little guide that guides that. And then I have a 3/8 star knob that kind of just locks this thing into place. So as I hold it down, I can lock it into place. Now the fit was just a touch loose, maybe a 32nd of an inch. So I wanted to kind of decrease the size of the follower, a 64th. So off camera, I decreased the size of the follower, a 64th of an inch, and decided I was going to try another run, and I cut the other side of the piece of oak, just the scrap pieces of oak that I was using to test the fit. And after doing that, the fit was better. It wasn't perfect, so there's a little bit of messing around to get it perfect, and I'm gonna show you guys in a follow-up video on how to adjust this thing and all of that good business, and how to change the size of the follower to make it a tighter fit. And but after doing it, it wasn't terrible, it wasn't great. You probably could have glued this joint, but it was not a perfect joint. So this was quite a project. Now, is there a big advantage to having one of these in the shop? Not really, unless you're going to do some really complex mortise and tenon, like you wanted a tenonry, like you wanted maybe you wanted a heart shape tenon, through tenon coming out the side of a leg, or you wanted to do something pretty fancy. Is there a point in this? Not really. I mean, there's much easier ways to make box joints, of course. Tenonry, there's so many ways to make tenons. This is really complex just to make a tenon. Now I will say something like this, even a simpler form than this would be great for making like loose tenonry, like a domino machine. You cut a pocket in each side and then just throw a loose tenon in there. That would be really nice for this, because in that case, you don't really have to dial in this real accurately. You put a follower on one side and it will make a pattern, and then you just repeat that on the opposite side for the pattern, and then you just make a tenon to fit inside of that. So there's not as much hassle with really dialing this in. But as far as performing really tight fits and getting that stuff all dialed in, it's a major pain in the butt. Even as simple form as I've made this, you still have to have pretty accurate machines. You still have to have, I would call it intermediate to advanced skill level to build this thing and to make it really work well for you. Now, I am going to put a second video out on this in a week or two, and I'll talk more about adjusting it, a lot more about how I made the slide work really well, and more about how you can make this so it's beefy and support it, and then I'll show you how to dial it in so you can get those really accurate cuts if you really want to build one. I will probably make plans available, or a SketchUp file at least, for free on the website for those of you who insist. But honestly, I would definitely consider other means of making tendons, and obviously box joints are better on a table saw anyway. But if you're down, if you're dead serious about it, do it. I will say that the taps from the Wood Whisperer and Andy Klein performed great in this project, and one of the things I really like about them is the length of the shank. You can get really a lot of depth out of them, which you can't do with metal ones. And another advantage is these are bull nose, so if you drill a hole and it's not a through hole, you can get threads almost down to the bottom of the hole, where you're never going to get that in with a metal tap. So I would definitely say they're worth the investment. They're high quality. Really enjoyed these guys. Great job on that. I'll put links to videos down below if you guys want to check out more about those from Andy and the Wood Whisperer, Mr. Mark Spagnolo. So there you have it. Will I ever build another one? No. Will I keep this around the shop? Probably not. But I will do a second video showing some more of the details, dialing it in for those of you who really want to try and make one. And of course, I'll put the free SketchUp file up on my channel, on my website, when I get the next video done. Thanks for watching. We'll be talking to you soon. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I like it when you guys come back. Talk to you later.